in the book, you have a very drastic scenario where the government takes unbelievable action. It's near the end of the book, and I won't spell it out here because I don't want to give the story away. Do you see that happening? And I guess it goes back to this, strangely enough. Where does the title of your book come from?
Yeah, that comes from the Pledge of Allegiance. So the whole idea that evolved after the Civil War that the country was, this was not an original idea of America. America was originally the states joined voluntarily. The idea evolved after the Civil War that the country was indivisible, that it should be held together at any cost. And I'm not, certainly wouldn't try to make make known my opinion about the Civil War, the reasons for it, why it was fought, what are the noble reasons, whatever. But you look at the cost of the Civil War in terms of lives lost. 600,000 American soldiers killed. That's the equivalent of 5 million dead Americans today. Hundreds of thousands of civilians that died because of cholera and typhus and bombs dropping on their houses and fires and such. Half the country burned to the ground, essentially. The government itself in the North bankrupted, forced to print money and creating the greenback hyperinflation and then the terrible depression in the 1870s. I mean, that's what they mean by indivisible, that they will go to any length to preserve the Union. They're not going to allow the Union to fall apart, they being the people in power. And that's the conclusion I drew while writing the book. I look at the people in our government, and I just they're like actors. They're like Hollywood actors. They don't have any principles. They don't have any convictions. They don't stand for anything other than getting reelected. And they'll change sides if that means they'll get elected. Like an Arlen Specter. They'll do whatever they have to do just to keep the fame and notoriety of being in charge of something, which is quite a contrast to what you had in the Soviet Union, for instance. You think about Gorbachev, and yes, he was a communist, and yes, he presided over their imperial wars in Afghanistan. But as the Soviet Union was collapsing, think of all the restraint he showed. I mean, he didn't turn the military loose on his own people. He didn't put martial law in place. He didn't. He showed tremendous restraint, knowing very well that it was all going to be on his watch, and that would be his legacy. When I think about the great statesman of the 20th century, Gorbachev, to me, is far and away the most significant person of the 20th century because of the restraint he showed. Now compare that to Abraham Lincoln, or compare it to contemporary leaders in the United States, John McCain, or Barack Obama, or Hillary Clinton, or Newt Gingrich, or Mitt Romney. What do you think those guys are going to do? They're not going to stand by and allow an insurrection to happen in the United States that rips the country apart. They're going to keep escalating and stepping up the response step by step, but they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop, and they will resort. I firmly believe they will resort to anything they have to do to hold it together.
Even if it makes it difficult for many of us?
I don't think they care.
Yeah.
You see Peter King, that congressman from New York. After that terrible incident in Arizona, the
shooting,
Loeffner shooter. Yeah.
Yes.
His response, his first response, and this is a Republican. His first response is to propose legislation that insulates and protects federal officials to the extent that no citizen is permitted to even legally, peacefully, allowed to exercise their right to bear arms within 1,000 feet of a government official. It just perfectly describes the arrogance and it's almost like Marie Antoinette. Let them eat cake. They're isolated out there in Washington. They don't care about you and I. All they care about is their own power and their own notoriety.
Well, our time is beginning to wind down. Troy, I want to thank you very much for being with us today here on Destiny Survival Radio. I've been talking with Troy J. Grice, author of Indivisible. And I want to say thanks again, Troy, for being on the program today. And that's going to wrap up another edition of Destiny Survival Radio. Thank you very much for listening. Be listening again next week. And in the meantime, keep prepping.